"He's always trying to use my songs," Michael Jackson said in a 1995 interview, pointing his finger at Prince. Relationships between the world's biggest stars ranged from public praise to private animosities, from collaborations to betrayals. This wasn't just about competition, it was a complex story of power, art, and ego. If these kinds of stories catch your attention, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Where are you watching us from right now? Let us know in the comments below. The world of pop music at its highest levels is not simply an industry, it's a rarefied sphere where immense talent, wealth, power, and ego intersect in complex ways. Within this small universe of genuine superstars, relationships take on dimensions that transcend normal professional connections or rivalries. They become defining narratives that shape both careers and the cultural landscape itself. For Michael Jackson, arguably the biggest solo musical artist of all time, these relationships with fellow musicians were particularly complex and often contradictory. As someone who began his career as a child within a family group and later achieved unprecedented solo success, Jackson's connections with other artists were shaped by a unique set of circumstances: his early fame, his transitional role between musical eras, his extraordinary commercial success, and the increasing isolation of his later years. These professional relationships, ranging from mentor figures to protégés, from creative collaborators to bitter rivals, reveal aspects of Jackson's character and career that his public persona often obscured. They tell the story not just of a supremely talented performer, but of a complex artist navigating the fraught territory of fame, creativity, business, and personal connection at the highest levels of the entertainment industry. Perhaps no relationship better exemplifies the complexity of Jackson's professional connections than his decades-long rivalry with Prince. On paper, the two shared numerous similarities: both were born in 1958, both transformed pop music in the 1980s, both were known for boundary-pushing creativity and theatrical performances, both challenged racial categories in music, and both maintained tight control over their artistic output. Yet despite, or perhaps because of, these parallels, Jackson and Prince maintained a cool distance that occasionally erupted into more overt competition. Their rivalry was rarely expressed directly in public statements, existing instead in a series of professional maneuvers, private comments relayed by associates, and occasional passive-aggressive references that fans and industry insiders eagerly analyzed. The origins of the Jackson-Prince rivalry are somewhat murky, though most accounts place its beginning in the early 1980s as Prince's star was rising while Jackson was cementing his post-Jackson 5 solo career with Off the Wall and preparing to release Thriller. According to Quincy Jones, who produced Jackson's most successful albums, the tension was evident early on. In a 2018 Vulture interview, Jones recalled a dinner he arranged with the two stars. Prince was wearing that outfit with the butt cut out of his pants, and Michael didn't like that. Michael said, "Why would you dress like that in front of me?" Prince told him, "You want to know why? Because your A** is so tight, you couldn't park a Rolls-Royce up there, that's why." This colorful anecdote, while possibly embellished over time, captures something essential about the contrast between the two artists: Jackson, increasingly careful and controlled in his public persona, versus Prince, deliberately provocative and sexually explicit. This fundamental difference in approach would define much of their subsequent relationship. The rivalry intensified in 1984, when Prince released Purple Rain in the wake of Jackson's world-conquering Thriller album. Both the album and film were enormous successes, establishing Prince as a genuine competitor to Jackson's crown. Industry observers noted that Jackson seemed particularly attuned to Prince's success, monitoring his sales figures, concert attendance, and critical reception. Former CBS Records executive Walter Yetnikoff recalled in his memoir, "Michael was obsessed with Prince's success. He would call me at all hours asking for updates on Prince's numbers. I had to remind him that his own numbers were still bigger, but he remained convinced that Prince was gaining on him." The competitive dynamic extended to artistic approaches as well. Jackson focused on creating universally appealing pop with meticulous production and accessible lyrics, while Prince's music often featured more explicit themes, experimental structures, and instrumental virtuosity. The contrast created natural battle lines among fans and critics about what constituted authentic musical innovation versus commercial savvy. Alan Light, former editor of Vibe magazine, observed, "Michael was creating music that everybody could embrace. Your little sister and your grandmother could love Billie Jean." Prince was deliberately making music that challenged people, that made some listeners uncomfortable. They represented two completely different philosophies about pop music. The competition extended beyond commercial metrics to artistic territory as well. When Prince was invited to participate in the all-star charity single, "We Are the World," co-written by Jackson, he declined, a decision that was interpreted by many as a snub. Prince would later explain that he didn't feel comfortable performing someone else's song, preferring to contribute his own composition, but the incident heightened perceptions of tension between the two stars. Their paths crossed most visibly during a James Brown concert in 1983, when Brown invited first Jackson and then Prince to join him on stage. Jackson delivered an impressive impromptu dance performance, then graciously introduced Prince. When Prince took the stage, he struggled with a malfunctioning microphone, attempted some dance moves and guitar playing, then accidentally knocked over a prop lamp while leaving the stage. The awkward moment seemed to physically manifest the competitive tension between the two stars, with Jackson appearing composed and Prince uncharacteristically flustered. The incident became legendary in music circles, with filmmaker Spike Lee later recounting, "Michael called me one night and said, 'Spike, I have something I want to show you.' And he had a VHS tape of this performance, and he was laughing so hard he was crying when Prince fell off the stage. He kept rewinding it and rewinding it. He was falling out of his chair, laughing." This private gloating revealed a rarely seen competitive edge to Jackson, who generally maintained a more diplomatic public stance toward other artists. It suggested that beneath the carefully maintained image of the gentle, childlike star was a fiercely competitive artist who took satisfaction in a rival's moment of embarrassment. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, the rivalry had become something of an open secret in the music industry. When Warner Brothers offered Jackson a guest appearance in Prince's film, Graffiti Bridge, Jackson declined. When Prince was offered a duet with Jackson, he similarly refused. Opportunities for direct collaboration that might have produced extraordinary creative results were repeatedly lost to the ongoing tension. The competition extended to concert tours as well. During Prince's Purple Rain tour in 1984 to 1985, he would sometimes include subtle references to Jackson in his performances, while Jackson's Bad tour in 1987 to 1989 featured elements that seemed designed to showcase his dancing abilities in contrast to Prince's instrumental focus. Music journalist and author Steve Knopper noted, both were watching each other's moves very closely. Michael's people would attend Prince shows to see what he was doing. Prince's team kept tabs on Michael's production. They were taking notes on each other in a way that was unique among artists at that level. The most direct public acknowledgement of the rivalry came during a 1997 press conference in which Jackson, responding to a reporter's question about Prince, said, "I don't like to say negative things about him because he's one of the greatest musicians and dancers in the world. I think Prince is a brilliant talent, but he's so competitive. He's very competitive." This measured public statement contrasted with private comments reported by those close to Jackson. His former security team members Bill Whitfield and Javon Beard claimed in their book that Jackson would sometimes listen to Prince's music and remark that it was nasty or comment negatively on Prince's appearance or performances. One particularly revealing incident occurred during the planning stages for Jackson's Bad music video. According to director Martin Scorsese, the original concept included Prince as Jackson's adversary in the video's narrative. The idea was to have these two titans of pop face off in a carefully choreographed confrontation, Scorsese recalled in a later interview. But Prince declined, and frankly, I don't think Michael was that disappointed. The competitive tension between them was real, not something that would work well in a controlled environment like a video shoot. From Prince's side, similar veiled criticisms emerged. While rarely addressing Jackson directly in interviews, Prince would occasionally make references that fans understood as Jackson jabs, such as his comment during a 2004 concert that real music is played by real musicians, perceived as a dig at Jackson's highly produced sound. Prince also seemed to deliberately schedule album releases and tours to compete directly with Jackson's projects. When Jackson released History in 1995, Prince quickly followed with The Gold Experience, even going so far as to write Prince 1, Michael Jackson 0 on his face during performances from that era. Despite the tension, there was always an undercurrent of mutual artistic respect. Jackson reportedly had a VHS collection of Prince performances that he would study admiringly, while Prince covered Jackson's song Don't Stop Till You Get Enough in concerts on several occasions. Each recognized the other's unique talent, even as they maintained their distance. Engineer and producer Susan Rogers, who worked closely with Prince during his peak years, offered a unique perspective. Prince would never admit it publicly, but he studied Michael's work intensely. He respected Michael's perfectionism and his ability to connect with audiences. The competition pushed both of them to greater heights creatively, even if it prevented them from working together. The rivalry ended only with their deaths, Prince in 2016 and Jackson in 2009, leaving fans to wonder what collaborations might have been possible had the two greatest pop innovators of their generation found common ground. While the Prince rivalry represented a relationship between contemporaneous competitors, Jackson's connection with Paul McCartney illustrated a different dynamic, one that evolved from cross-generational admiration to collaboration and ultimately to business conflict that permanently damaged a once promising friendship. The relationship began warmly in the early 1980s. Jackson, having grown up admiring the Beatles, was eager to work with McCartney, while the former Beatle recognized Jackson's extraordinary talent and the potential commercial benefit of collaborating with the rising solo star. Their first work together, Say Say Say, appeared on McCartney's 1983 album, Pipes of Peace, while their second duet, The Girl Is Mine, was featured on Jackson's Thriller. The recording of The Girl Is Mine reportedly created an immediate bond between the two. Producer Quincy Jones recalled, "They hit it off immediately. Paul was charmed by Michael's enthusiasm, and Michael was in awe of working with a Beatle. They giggled together throughout the sessions like old friends." During the recording, McCartney reportedly shared stories about the Beatles' experiences and offered advice about navigating fame and the music business. For Jackson, who had grown up idolizing the Beatles despite being forbidden to listen to their music by his father, due to religious restrictions in the Jackson household, these sessions represented a meaningful connection to music history. During this period of collaboration, the two developed what appeared to be a genuine friendship. Jackson visited McCartney's farm in Scotland, spent time with his family, and the pair were frequently photographed together at industry events. McCartney reportedly offered Jackson business advice, including the suggestion that purchasing music publishing rights could be a sound investment. Linda McCartney, Paul's wife, captured photographs of Jackson's visit to their farm that show a relaxed, happy side of the pop star rarely seen in public imagery. In one notable image, Jackson is riding horses with the McCartney children, looking genuinely carefree. These moments suggested a friendship that transcended mere professional collaboration, with Jackson finding in the McCartney family a model of normalcy within fame that contrasted sharply with his own family experience. This advice about music publishing would ultimately transform their relationship in ways McCartney could not have anticipated. In 1985, Jackson purchased the publishing rights to the majority of the Beatles' catalog for $47.5 million, outbidding McCartney himself. The catalog was part of the ATV Music Publishing Library, which included approximately 4,000 songs, with the Beatles' compositions being the most valuable assets. The business move came as a complete surprise to McCartney, who had expressed interest in purchasing the catalog himself but had balked at the price. According to industry insiders, McCartney had assumed his conversations with Jackson about music publishing were simply friendly shop talk between artists, not the prelude to a major business move that would impact him directly. The purchase was a savvy business move by Jackson, but it created an irreparable rift with McCartney, who had lost control of his own compositions and would need to pay royalties to Jackson to perform many of the songs he had written with John Lennon. In a 1989 interview, McCartney described his feelings about the situation. "I think it's dodgy to do something like that. To be someone's friend, and then buy the rug they're standing on." More revealing was McCartney's comment in a 2001 interview. "I made a joke about it to Michael at the time. I said, 'One day I'll own them.' He kind of laughed, and I never thought any more of it. But it hurt. It really hurt." This rare admission of emotional pain from the usually upbeat McCartney underscored how deeply the business move had affected their personal relationship. Jackson, for his part, seemed genuinely surprised by McCartney's reaction. In a statement released through his representatives, he expressed that the purchase was purely a business decision and that he still considered McCartney a friend and musical influence. According to those close to Jackson, he had expected McCartney to understand the investment aspect of the purchase separate from their personal relationship. John Branca, Jackson's attorney who orchestrated the deal, later said, "Michael was shocked by Paul's reaction. He saw it as implementing the very advice Paul had given him about investing in publishing. In Michael's mind, it wasn't personal, it was business." This fundamental disconnect, Jackson's compartmentalization of business and friendship versus McCartney's view that they were inseparable, revealed cultural and generational differences between the artists that had been obscured by their superficial chemistry during their collaborations. The two never collaborated again after the catalog purchase, and their public comments about each other became increasingly sparse and measured. What had begun as a promising artistic partnership between two generations of pop innovators ended as a cautionary tale about the complex intersection of business and personal relationships in the music industry. In a curious postscript to their relationship, Jackson specified in his will that after his death, McCartney should regain the publishing rights to his compositions. This gesture, which could not be implemented due to the complex financial arrangements surrounding Jackson's estate, suggested that Jackson may have recognized the personal hurt caused by the business move and wished to make amends in some fashion. When Jackson died in 2009, McCartney released a statement expressing sadness and focusing on their earlier collaborative period. "I feel privileged to have hung out and worked with Michael. He was a massively talented boy man with a gentle soul. His music will be remembered forever and my memories of our time together will be happy ones." The statement was gracious but notable for its emphasis on the early period of their relationship, before the catalog purchase that had so dramatically altered their connection. The Jackson-McCartney relationship stands as an example of how business decisions in the music industry can permanently transform even the most promising creative partnerships. If Jackson's relationships with Prince and McCartney illustrated the complexities of competition and business conflicts, his connection with Madonna represented yet another dimension of superstar dynamics, a relationship characterized by mutual curiosity, occasional public support, private criticism, and ultimately a sense of two parallel careers that never quite meaningfully intersected despite numerous opportunities. Like Prince, Madonna was a contemporary of Jackson and achieved her commercial breakthrough in the mid-1980s as his own star was ascending to unprecedented heights. The two met occasionally at industry events and award shows, most famously attending the 1991 Academy Awards together in what was widely interpreted as a publicity arrangement rather than a genuine date. The Oscar night date generated enormous media attention, with the pairing of pop's king and queen creating a cultural moment that overshadowed the actual award ceremony. According to those who witnessed the evening, the interaction between Jackson and Madonna was awkward but cordial, with both stars seemingly aware of the publicity value of their joint appearance while maintaining a certain personal distance. Behind the scenes, according to those close to both stars, there was genuine mutual fascination. Madonna, known for her strategic approach to her career and image, studied Jackson's ability to create cultural moments through his music videos and performances. Jackson, meanwhile, was reportedly intrigued by Madonna's willingness to court controversy and constantly reinvent herself. Photographer Sam Emerson, who worked with both artists at different points, observed, "They were like opposing magnetic forces, fascinated by each other but also repelled." Madonna was all about pushing boundaries and being provocative, Michael was increasingly concerned with his image and creating a kind of pure, untouchable persona. Each represented what the other deliberately wasn't, which created this strange tension. This professional interest occasionally extended to personal connection. During a period in the early 1990s, the two reportedly had several long phone conversations, discussing their experiences as the world's most famous pop stars and the unique pressures that came with that position. According to Christopher Anderson's biography of Madonna, she once remarked to a friend, "Michael and I are the only ones who know what this level of fame feels like. It's a club with just two members." This shared experience of unprecedented celebrity created a bond that transcended their stylistic and philosophical differences. However, their artistic sensibilities and personal values ultimately proved too different for a meaningful collaboration or close friendship to develop. Madonna's deliberately provocative approach to sexuality and religious imagery contrasted sharply with Jackson's more carefully maintained public image. Their musical styles, while both defined as pop, came from different traditions and sensibilities. Attempts at collaboration fell through on multiple occasions. Most notably, Madonna approached Jackson about performing on his 1987 album, Bad, with preliminary discussions about a duet that would have potentially been the album's title track. According to producer Quincy Jones, Madonna and Michael met to discuss it, but it just didn't happen. Their creative processes were too different, and I think there was an underlying competitive tension that prevented them from really committing to working together. The relationship took a more negative turn in the late 1990s and early 2000s, as Madonna began making occasional public comments that seemed critical of Jackson. In a 2003 interview with British journalist Michael Parkinson, she described Jackson as damaged and suggested his childhood experiences had left him psychologically scarred. While not entirely untrue, the comments were perceived by Jackson and his supporters as a betrayal from a fellow artist who understood the scrutiny of fame. In private, according to several sources, Jackson was deeply hurt by Madonna's comments, feeling they reinforced the media narrative that portrayed him as strange or unstable rather than focusing on his artistic contributions. One associate recalled Jackson saying, "She knows what it's like to be picked apart by the press. Why would she join in?" Despite these tensions, Madonna was among the first major artists to publicly defend Jackson during his 2005 trial on child molestation charges, of which he was acquitted on all counts. In an interview with British magazine Attitude, she said, "I don't have any opinion on whether Michael Jackson did or didn't do those things that they're saying he did. All I know is he was extremely kind to me and my children. I can't judge him and I don't want to judge him." This public support during Jackson's darkest period suggested a layer of professional solidarity that transcended their differences and occasional tensions, a recognition that regardless of their contrasting approaches to artistry and fame, they shared the unique experience of global superstardom and the scrutiny it entailed. Guy Oseary, Madonna's longtime manager, later revealed that during the trial period, she had reached out to Jackson privately as well, offering emotional support and expressing concern for his well-being. This private gesture, not publicized at the time, indicated a more complex relationship than the occasionally sniping public comments might have suggested. After Jackson's death in 2009, Madonna delivered one of the most personal and emotional tributes at the MTV Video Music Awards, describing their relationship from her perspective. "Michael Jackson was one of the first artists that I saw on television and heard on the radio. I was mesmerized. He was otherworldly. In a desperate attempt to hold on to his memory, I went to YouTube and watched him dance. Watching him, I was reminded of why I fell in love with him in the first place." While their relationship had been complex and sometimes strained during his lifetime, Madonna's tribute captured the foundation of mutual artistic admiration that had always existed beneath the occasional tensions and differences in approach. As fellow travelers at the highest echelon of pop stardom, they recognized in each other a shared experience that few others could comprehend, even if their paths to and through that experience differed dramatically. Beyond these high-profile superstar relationships, Jackson maintained connections with numerous other artists throughout his career, each revealing different aspects of his artistic personality and approach to professional relationships. His collaborations with Quincy Jones represented one of his most successful and sustained creative partnerships. Jones, who produced Jackson's three most acclaimed solo albums, Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad, functioned as both mentor and creative equal to Jackson. Their relationship combined Jones's musical sophistication and experience with Jackson's intuitive brilliance and performance skills, creating a whole greater than its parts. Jones recalled in his autobiography, "Michael had this incredible childlike creativity, but also a perfectionistic streak that matched my own. We could work on a vocal for hours, and if it wasn't right, he'd be the first to say, 'Let's do it again.' That kind of dedication is rare, even among the greatest talents." The creative chemistry between them produced some of pop music's most enduring classics, from "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough" to "Billie Jean" to "Man in the Mirror." Their working process typically involved Jackson creating detailed demos at home, often singing all the vocal parts and beatboxing the instrumentation, then bringing these fully formed concepts to Jones, who would refine and enhance them with his sophisticated musical knowledge and top-tier session musicians. Engineer Bruce Swedian, who worked closely with both men, described their dynamic as complementary genius, Jackson's pop instincts and performance abilities meshing perfectly with Jones's jazz-informed arrangements and production expertise. This balance allowed Jackson to realize his artistic vision while benefiting from Jones's experience and technical knowledge. The partnership ended somewhat abruptly after Bad, with Jackson choosing to produce his subsequent albums himself or with other collaborators. Jones would later express some bitterness about this decision, but the body of work they created together stands as one of the most successful producer-artist collaborations in pop music history. With younger artists, Jackson often took on a mentoring role, particularly as his career progressed. He worked closely with Sida Garrett, who co-wrote "Man in the Mirror" and duet with Jackson on "I Just Can't Stop Loving You." Garrett has described Jackson as a demanding but supportive collaborator who pushed her to develop her talents while providing opportunities that transformed her career. "Michael had this incredible ability to see potential in people," Garrett recalled in a 2017 interview. He would say, "I hear something in your voice," or "I think you can write something special," and then he would create the space for you to rise to his expectation. It was intimidating but also the greatest opportunity imaginable. Similar mentorship dynamics characterized Jackson's relationships with the boy band 3T, comprised of his nephews, aspiring performer Wade Robson, and various young artists he took an interest in throughout his career. These relationships reflected Jackson's genuine desire to nurture new talent, though some were later complicated by allegations of inappropriate behavior in Robson's case, allegations that remain controversial and disputed. With established peers like Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, and Elizabeth Taylor, Jackson maintained friendships that combined professional respect with personal connection. These relationships provided him with rare peer support from individuals who understood the pressures of fame and could relate to his experiences in ways that few others could. Diana Ross, in particular, occupied a special place in Jackson's life, having been both a professional mentor during the early Jackson 5 years at Motown and later a genuine friend throughout his adult career. Their bond transcended professional collaboration, with Jackson naming Ross as the secondary guardian for his children in his will, demonstrating the depth of trust he placed in her. With his sister Janet, Michael maintained a relationship that combined familial bonds with professional respect and occasional collaboration. As Janet developed her own successful career in the mid-1980s and beyond, Michael supported her artistically while maintaining a healthy competitive spirit that pushed both siblings to greater creative achievements. Their most notable collaboration, the 1995 duet, "Scream," addressed the media scrutiny both had experienced and showcased their complementary performing styles. The black-and-white video, with its futuristic setting and synchronized choreography, remains a visual testament to their artistic connection and shared experience of fame. Jimmy Jam, who produced many of Janet's biggest hits with partner Terry Lewis, observed that Michael and Janet had this unspoken creative competition that was totally different from his rivalry with someone like Prince. It was more like they inspired each other to excel. He would see her do something innovative, and you could tell he was proud but also thinking about how to raise his own game. Jackson's relationships with members of his own band and dancers revealed yet another dimension of his professional character. Those who performed with him consistently describe him as demanding but fair, expecting perfect execution while recognizing and rewarding talent and hard work. Guitarist Jennifer Batten, who performed with Jackson on 3 world tours, has spoken about his meticulous approach to rehearsals and performances but also his genuine appreciation for his band members' contributions. Similarly, dancers like Lavelle Smith Jr. and Travis Payne have described Jackson as a detail-oriented perfectionist who nevertheless created space for others to shine and grow professionally. Choreographer Vincent Patterson, who worked with Jackson on multiple projects, including the "Smooth Criminal" segment of the film Moonwalker, described Jackson's collaborative approach. He had an incredibly clear vision, but he was also open to ideas. If you came up with something that enhanced what he was trying to achieve, he would embrace it enthusiastically. There was no ego in the creative process, just a commitment to making everything as perfect as possible. What emerges from examining these various professional relationships is a portrait more complex than Jackson's public image often suggested. Far from the isolated, wacko-jacko caricature presented in tabloids, Jackson maintained a network of professional connections that ranged from deeply collaborative creative partnerships to competitive rivalries, from mentoring relationships to business conflicts. These relationships were shaped by several key aspects of Jackson's character and circumstances. His early fame and unique career trajectory meant he had few true peers who could understand his experience. His perfectionism and exacting creative standards made him a demanding collaborator but also pushed those around him to their best work. His increasing isolation in later years limited his direct interactions with other artists but intensified the significance of the connections he did maintain. The business dimension of these relationships cannot be overlooked. At Jackson's level of fame and commercial success, artistic connections were inevitably entangled with financial considerations, contractual obligations, and market competition. The McCartney catalog purchase demonstrates how dramatically these business factors could affect personal and creative relationships. Similarly, the competitive dynamics with artists like Prince were inseparable from the commercial realities of the music industry, where chart positions, sales figures, and market share created a framework for rivalry that transcended purely artistic considerations. As Jackson's personal life became increasingly complicated and controversial, particularly after the first allegations of inappropriate behavior with children in 1993, his professional relationships were inevitably affected. Some artists publicly distanced themselves, others offered qualified support, and a small number remained steadfastly loyal. These reactions further sorted and defined his professional network during the most difficult periods of his career. In his final years, as Jackson prepared for the "This Is It" concert series that was intended to revitalize his career but was prevented by his untimely death, his professional circle had contracted significantly. Yet even in this period, his connections with choreographers, musicians, and creative directors reflected his continuing ability to inspire loyalty and bring out exceptional performances from those he worked with. Choreographer Kenny Ortega, who was directing the "This Is It" tour, described Jackson during this period. Despite everything he'd been through, when Michael was in creative mode, the old magic was still there. He could still inspire people to give their absolute best. That ability to connect with other artists and elevate their work never diminished, even when so much else in his life had changed. After Jackson's death in 2009, many artists who had maintained distance during the controversial periods of his later career came forward with tributes and expressions of appreciation for his artistic contributions. This posthumous reassessment suggested that beneath the public tensions and occasional conflicts, there remained a bedrock of professional respect for Jackson's talents and achievements that transcended the complexities of individual relationships. The story of Michael Jackson's professional relationships ultimately reflects the extraordinary nature of his career and talent. From child star to the king of pop, from record-breaking hitmaker to controversial figure, his journey through the entertainment industry was unique in both its heights and challenges. The artists who shared portions of that journey with him, whether as collaborators, rivals, ments, or industry peers, experienced different facets of a complex creative personality. Their varied testimonies and recollections, taken together, provide a more complete picture of Michael Jackson the artist and professional than any single perspective could offer. In the final analysis, even Jackson's most fraught professional relationships, the rivalry with Prince that prevented potentially historic collaborations, the business conflict with McCartney that ended a promising friendship, the complex dynamic with Madonna that never quite resolved into either close alliance or open antagonism, tell us something essential about the intersection of extraordinary talent, unprecedented fame, and the very human needs for connection, recognition, and respect. These relationships, in all their complexity, are not merely footnotes to Jackson's artistic legacy but integral components of the complete story of his career, a story in which personal connections, business decisions, creative collaborations, and competitive dynamics all played crucial roles in shaping one of the most extraordinary trajectories in entertainment history.